Sengoku, not to be confused with Son Goku, that's a different thing altogether, is a SNK Neo Geo game that I really am quite nostalgic for. I first played it as part of the SNK Neo Geo collection on my PSP probably about 10 years ago. And I remember it being very interesting. Like, the setting was cool, and it was always throwing these interesting new ideas and concepts at you, and it just seemed like a really interesting breath of fresh air. Playing it now, I don't know what I was talking about, because honestly, while this game has some interesting ideas, it is at best a subpar beat-em-up. Now, the story, as far as I can tell, is there's this Lord of the Dead of Demons or something, and he wants to take control of a post-apocalyptic world. And it's up to Diet Kenshiro to go punch him a whole bunch in his smug face, and that's really about it. We do get some interstitial cutscenes between stages, but they're all 100% identical, at least in the English version. I'm not sure if they were actually, like, supposed to give any extra information in the Japanese version that localization just decided not to bother with, but the only difference between the cutscenes in between stages is the different demons you get to see. It really just serves to highlight the next boss, so it doesn't really tell you anything about any of these characters. I mean, on the other hand, though, it is a beat-em-up and it is an arcade game, so it's sort of impressive we got a story at all, but there really isn't much of one, and in that regard, I don't think I can really praise it for anything in that regard. Now, the gameplay to Sengoku is fairly basic. You hit things real hard, and you can run around jumping and punching. There is one extra ability to your character, but that's a bit of a secret until later. And that's really it. You are dropped into a level. You have to make several different level transitions, which are really cool, although if you are photosensitive, there is a bit of flashing, so that's not ideal. But other than that, it's just punching enemies in the face a whole bunch and getting a few power-ups to let you punch your enemies in the face a little better. Now, I did mention that Diet Kenshiro here does get one extra ability, and that's when you make your first transition to the spirit world, because you have to go fight the dead on their home turf too, which conceptually really cool idea. Like, the first time you're playing this, you're just walking around, whoa, holy crap, now I'm in the sky fighting some dead guys in the dead guy world. It's a neat idea. It was unexpected the first time I played this. And as you pummel dead guys in the face a whole bunch, suddenly you'll gain a spirit that says they will join you. And that's, I guess, what the hook of this game is, because your extra ability is freaking henshit-a-go-go, baby. You can transform into them. You have 3 different transformations, and while I think this is supposed to be the hook of the game, and it's supposed to be like this really fun idea that's supposed to vary up gameplay, it was really badly squandered here. Ultimately, you have 3 different transformations that are ostensibly supposed to give you a different range of abilities to handle different situations. Transformation number the first lets you transform into a pre-Okami Amaterasu, and as her magical sun goddess wolf powers, you get to not really hit anything because she doesn't have a hitbox to save her life, but she does have a screw attack that is almost impossible to aim, so that's not really any better. Transformation number the second lets you play as Joe Musashi, taking a break from playing Shinobi to go help you save the world, and his special abilities are doing flips to get across the screen slightly faster. Similar to your standard form, all he does is really punch things, so there's not really any increase in power or different moveset to give him any real reason to play as him other than just to get across the screen a little bit faster. And I gotta say, the flipping actually controls a little bit weird. Like, it just doesn't feel like it controls right. And finally, Transformation the third lets you play as the kabuki actor from Samurai Showdown, except he forgot his naginata, so now you're just stuck hitting things with swords real hard. And that sounds really bloody boring compared to the other two, and the sad thing is, that's what makes him the best transformation out of the lot, is he is basically just an extra sword for you to smack enemies with, and that at least gives you some extra reach. I think functionally all 3 of these transformations are supposed to give you like an extension to your health bar, sort of, as you could transform into them to save yourself some health. But given the way this game reacts mechanically, that doesn't really help any, in the sense that when you hit an enemy, for whatever reason, the developers decide they have to give all the enemies a recoil effect to their character every time they get hit, as well as invulnerability. So every time you smack them, they're gonna bounce off your fist, take a stunned pose, and then be invulnerable. And you have to do so entirely without combos. Yeah, like, you know, one of the most basic things about these sort of beat 'em up things? Yeah. There's none of that here. No one would want combos. Why would anyone want combos? It's only really bloody, empowering, and fun. It's an arcade game. I get that they're trying to make this difficult, but at the same time, the bizarre boss enemy spam later on, as well as the fact that, you know, every single blow will stun everything and push them actively out of danger so that you can't actually keep fighting because there's no combos, kind of already does that. Come on, Sengoku, meet me at least a little bit close to halfway here, please. And the combination of that stun, that recoil, and the very, very strict hitboxes your enemies have ultimately lead to a really unfun experience trying to beat the crap out of these guys. You can't combo them, it's hard to hit them, and every time you do, it pushes them so far away you can't keep doing it. It's almost like, you know, every time you hit your opponent you're supposed to feel good and empowered, but every time you do, it just pushes them away and makes them invulnerable, and it disincentivizes actually playing the game and beating up your opponents, because actually beating them up is so unsatisfying. And these enemies don't go down after 1 or 2 hits. You actually do have to hit them a couple times. So it makes even taking out the standard mooks kind of a pain, especially because they know when their invulnerability ends. You don't really. It's sort of nebulous to the player. So the idea of having an extended health bar with your extra characters, and in the case of the samurai, a little bit of extra range, it helps, but it's not great. It's also worth noting that these transformations have a bit of a weird balance to them. Like, not just in the fact that one is completely useless, one is basically just your character, and the other's your character with an upgrade, but more in the sense that when you transform into them, you have a timer. You can only use them for so long. If you die as your transformation, then you just get put back on the planet as your character, and then you can transform again if you want. But if you let the timer tick down, you actually permanently lose your power to summon that spirit until you regain them. Like, letting that timer wear down means that you've exhausted their spiritual energy, but if they die, it's totally fine. It's odd. Not bad, not good, just really peculiarly balanced, and I don't really understand the logic behind why they did it this way. Going back to main character Magoo here for a moment, there are some standard power-ups for him as well, but like the actual, like, transformations, they're a little bit weirdly handled. So, first power-up is, of course, your spirits. We've already talked about those. Second and third spirits are also, I think, only gained in the spirit realm. I don't remember getting them when I wasn't, but you can sometimes, and I think it's random, free either an old man or, like, the ghost of a woman from these monsters, and if you do, the old man will give you magic to let you have a projectile attack for a very short period of time. That's actually a very useful ability. In fact, it's probably the most powerful power-up in this game. Wish it lasted a lot longer because it's actually useful, but what can you do? The maiden will actually heal you, and this is important because there isn't really a way to heal in this game otherwise, other than freeing this, again, I'm pretty sure random maiden, because there's no indication that these maidens even exist. You have to just punch enemies and one pops out eventually, and I'm not sure if they're predetermined or what. It seems random to me. But she will fill up your health bar entirely, which is good. Ostensibly, there is one other way to heal in this game, but not really. You might have noticed these little green orbs floating around while I've been fighting, and yeah, those are kind of health pickups, sorta. Basically, they will heal you, but only if you pick up 5. And based on the fact that the enemies can kind of cheat by staying stunned and then hitting you immediately after they're stunned, yeah, you're going to be losing health probably too fast to actually collect 5 of these things in a row. At least I certainly was. I don't think I ever actually got to use these things' healing effects, because this game does actually get really brutally hard as well. And not in a fun sense, more in the sense that, well, eventually you fight 3 bosses in one screen that can jump from the entire side of the screen to the other, and they can cover the entire room at once. So, yeah, you're going to be dying a lot, and you might be lucky to get 1 or 2 punches off between deaths. Fun. I mentioned this was a Neo Geo game. Yeah, they have a tendency to be a little bit unfair, but this one just goes into really badly cheap territory at times. There are 3 other power-ups out there. There is a red orb, a blue orb, and a purple orb, and all 3 of these orbs give you swords. The red orb gives you a standard long sword, the purple orb gives you what is supposed to be like a magic sword, and the blue orb gives you a pair of katanas. And you're probably wondering, what's the difference between all these? And the answer is not really anything. They're pretty much all identical. They don't seem to do more damage than each other. They're pretty much just different paint jobs for the exact same thing, just so that you don't get bored with the one sword this game has. Sengoku, it doesn't do a lot of things in terms of actual gameplay and from an experience in a really well-made, sensible way. It doesn't feel like it was well thought out or really well balanced, and it is an arcade game, so it's supposed to be pretty badly imbalanced, but there's just a lot of things that make me question why this game was designed the way it was. because at the end of the day, when you strip it down of all of its sort of interesting little non sequiturs of events that you have to experience, really just have kind of a really bland beat 'em up with some awkward mechanics that don't really work half as well as I think they were designed to be. Now, the overall presentation to Sengoku is by far its high point. Visually, it's quite nice. Mixing the post-apocalyptic style of sort of the current levels mixed with the sort of spirit world Sengoku style Japanese flair, it makes for a really visually engaging experience. Thumbs up for that. Like I said, jumping between the post-apocalyptic world and the ghost world, really, really cool. They both look very distinct from one another, and it really does feel like you're traveling to places that you as a mortal being should not be experiencing. And the fact that you're interacting with spirits and you're seeing like ghosts and even gods at some points, you know, it feels like you are experiencing like this really bizarre other world. It's fun to actually experience this. This is what I remember about this game when I first played it. There aren't a ton of different enemies in this game, I will say that much, and they could have really worked on that, especially because they do recolor the same enemies multiple times, and it doesn't seem like the different colors really signify anything other than they're just a different color of the same guy. But at the same time, while the enemy designs might be kind of bland after a while, I have to admit I do appreciate their on-screen spawning animations because there is a lot of them. Like, seriously, I was like 80% the way through the game and I still was finding new ways enemies were showing up on screen. It was genuinely impressive. See all the different ways enemies could just show up to pick a fight with my guy. And the animations in this game are actually relatively impressive. Not gonna lie, the first time you grab a samurai's sword in midair, break it off, and make him have to throw it away because he's just so stunned that you, with your bare hands like an absolute boss, just disarmed him, makes you feel pretty badass. And that will always stick with me. That is, again, a high point of this game. The audio design to Sengoku, not so much. Like, there's one or two really good songs in the soundtrack. I think the latter two levels actually have a pretty good beat going on and really makes it feel kind of cathartic, punching the enemy a whole bunch to it. And the ghost world does have this sort of like ominous ancient Japan sort of feel to it, but everything else is really, really nondescript and honestly not very good. At the end of the day, the audio design hits kind of a flat note at sort of an average area, but to be fair, the visuals kind of make up for it for a while anyway. But the gameplay isn't going to save it for too long. I don't think the presentation is going to carry this all the way through a full playthrough, because it will get bland after a while. Now, if you want a copy of Sengoku on the Neo Geo, cheapest one I'm seeing right now is about $300 shipping included. That's of course for the Neo Geo AES cart. You can of course get this digitally like I did, and while I got this on sale for like, I think something like $2 or $3, ultimately, these things, for whatever reason, they never put the Neo Geo games on sale too often, which is a shame because I think they're normally going for like $14, $15 each, and given the quality of Sengoku, I think that's an absurd amount of money to pay for this, especially because I don't think this game is going to engage you all the way through, even if you are the kind of person who likes beat-em-ups like this. At that price, you're more likely to go out and just buy the Capcom beat 'em up bundle, and if nothing else, Battle Circuit on there is worth that price altogether, and you can go see my video on that. That game is awesome. You can also get a Super Famicom version of this, although it's not a great version, and if I recall, instead of playing Diet Kenshiro, you play as Diet Ryo from Shenmue, so there is that. But it wasn't a great conversion, and of course it is a Neo Geo game being put on the Super Famicom, so it's not going to be exactly arcade accurate, you know? That said, the cheapest one I'm seeing for that right now is $40, and I mean, even for the actual proper console experience, I think that's far too much. That said, Sengoku did do well enough to get not one but two sequels, and I've heard significantly better things about the sequels. I've never played them. I was nostalgic for the original and I wanted to experience it. This was a game I remembered for its strangeness. The fact that every single 5 seconds I was hit with a different non sequitur of what this game was presenting to me over and over again to create a really unique experience. But ultimately, while it does sort of have that going still, it's bogged down by a very bland beat-em-up system. Enemies that are far too time-consuming and frustrating to really want to beat, let alone actually fun to beat up on, and not a very good experience. And I feel like my memories of Sengoku were probably best left in the past.
Ho!